Okay, I'd like to call to order the May meeting of the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Board. First, before we jump to approval of the agenda, I just was hoping for guests here in the meeting just to announce yourself and maybe highlight which permit or item you're associated with if you are. So I figure we can start.
Everyone, my name is Gabby Newman. I work with Lockman TV Wine Coffee as a restoration manager, also doing project management for the Daylight Creek project. And I'm here to talk about the proposed outlet structure for the creek.
Awesome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Husong. I am a landscape architect and project manager in Parks and Recreation with the City of St. Paul. And I'm here also with the Daylight.
Announce yourself.
I'm Ashley Husong, I'm here at
Very cool.
Adriana Atchison. I'm a planner with Washington County Public Health and Environment Department. I'm Washington County's liaison for this watershed district, which is a little bit in our county. So I'm here just to listen.
Very cool. That is it.
That's one
Oh, yes.
Dan online as well.
Oh, Dan. Oh, you're on mute, bud.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Scollin, area hydrologist with DNR, and I'm here to listen, involved with the permitting of the proposal at by Walken TV. So interested to just listen to tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Well, I would like see if there's a motion to approve the agenda. Now, remember, if you want to take something out of the consent agenda, we should do it now. Move it down to the board discussions or actions. So if you want to move something off the consent agenda, go ahead and let me know. If not, motion, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Wonderful. Further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. We're moving to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, second. Okay. All in favor? Oh, further discussions or questions?
I do have a question, actually. The Oakdale Public Works, I think it's permit 2423, and the 3M remediation permit. There's a little that's 2405, and I believe we already had approved that one. I'm just wondering, from a work standpoint, timing, do we have any issues and concerns that first part's going to happen and then
Yeah, well,
be able to jump into it?
it has to happen first because they're gonna be doing the soil cleanup. I don't particularly know how much longer they have left for that. And they'll have to restore the wetland and the wetland buffer as they move out. And then the final grades that they leave the site will be where Oakdale starts. So it will have to be sequential like that. And the 2405, the 3M remediation work is still ongoing.
So the city will just have to wait for that to be finished.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the schedule. I could also ask Mary, who's been inspecting the site, if she has any idea how many more weeks or months the actual grading cleanup work will take. Yeah, I'm not sure.
But in any case, the permit will be approved, so they're aware they're working together. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Further questions or discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Moving on to visitor comments, since most of y'all are associated to a permit or an item, assuming no comments. Perfect. Move into permit program. Pass to you, Nicole.
Yeah. So all of the applications were included on the consent agenda this month. As far as the enforcement action report, I'm always happy to answer any questions. I think the biggest update for our program is that we welcomed our seasonal intern, Kendra, who started. She's part-time right now until finals are done. So mid-May, she'll be full-time. She's assisting with within the permit program, BMP inspections for permits that have already been closed. And then she's also helping us out with active construction site inspections to kind of ease Mary's load a little bit, so.
Welcome, that's good.
Yeah.
Nicole, you're going to have to bear with me. I lost some of my notes earlier, but one of the permit enforcement reports, there was a discovery of a trench. Do you mind just saying more about that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, when Mary did the initial erosion control walkthrough with Ramsey County and the contractor for this, White Bear Avenue Larpenter reconstruction, there was a large trench drain that you see pictured, on the second page of the enforcement report that was discovered and to my knowledge was not located on the plans prior to that. So, it's pretty unusual to have this kind of drainage structure in this kind of urban area. So I think Mary was saying that there's gonna have to be some creative erosion and sediment control until I assume that that structure is actually taken out for the project.
Okay.
So yeah, a combination of, there's really no inlet protection I'm aware of that's designed for something this large. And then you also have to think about maintaining drainage on a public roadway during, heavy rain events. So I think perimeter control with the ability for water to filter through, like I've seen rock berms used, or, just really rigorous street sweeping as well. But yeah, they're gonna have to be watching that area closely, because this is not something that we come across very often.
And I was gonna follow it up with, I don't recall the permit 22, even though I know I was on the board at the time. The plans are to remove that trench?
I don't know where exactly this structure is located. I would guess that if it's within the project area, it's gonna get ripped out.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I was curious.
Yeah.
It's on the east side, way there.
It's been there a long time.
Yeah. Go for it every day. Do we know, does it drain directly? I mean, it's been a flooding issue. So it was put in at some point, I don't know when, but it's got to be plugged into the storm sewer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is there a way that it could be like plugged and then, taken out if at the end of the day or something like that?
Temporarily. I don't know if they could completely block it off. I don't really know the nuances of what
Yeah.
drainage they need to maintain there, but
That'd be great.
yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to think of something for sure. And I'm sure Mary's been back to this site since, so I could always ask her for a follow-up too. It would have been prior to this report being written though.
And I have one other question on the enforcement report, if you don't mind. So the iron filtration, that needed to go through the 1 hour testing. I made an assumption that it passed. It didn't explicitly said it passed, but did it pass the last test? I saw the pictures. It looked like it was much better.
Yeah, it's a 48-hour drawdown.
48 hour.
Yeah, so that would be required for us to close the permit and to verify that it's functioning as designed. Particularly with iron enhanced basins, you don't want water to sit because it reduces the ability of that iron to remove phosphorus. But yeah, we do that for all filtration and infiltration facilities that are permitted through our program. We don't require them to, some cities and other permitting agencies might require something more specific, like opening a fire hydrant and actually flooding, but we just do visual inspection 48 hours after a rainfall, and it's worked for us. It's pretty easy to tell if it's holding water or not, if it's failing or not. And I think with this one, since Mary was inspecting regularly during construction, that she would have been noting that on all of her inspection reports. So of course, when the permit gets closed and there's the ask for the escrow to be refunded, that's when things get kicked into gear to get fixed, so.
Decisions around money, drive action.
Escrows are very helpful.
Any further questions? Anybody?
I was just going to, I highlighted that exact thing.
Yeah.
And was going to thank you and Mary for doing those tests. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing and to be recognized for it.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
definitely on our, like, we have a whole checklist for permit closure. And that's one of them, is obviously making sure the basins are not only drying down properly, but if there's vegetation associated with them, that they're not full of like invasive species or there's no active erosion, things like that.
Bless you. Awesome. Further questions for Nicole? Great report. Thank you. You,
Yes, thank you. So you approved 2 residential projects tonight. We're, amazed with the amount of applications we've had this year. I think I had 3 more that came in yesterday and today, so that's great. Still looking good for funding though. We had our new grant program specialist start today, Ashley Ritchie, so she'll hopefully at least log in next month. I don't want to overwhelm her too much. Making her come tonight, but she'll be taking over the stewardship grant program, so we'll ease her into that. Yeah. See her face next month.
that's awesome.
Paige, may I ask, do you know where or how they know about the stewardship grants?
How,
did
like,
they learn
general
about it?
people,
Yeah.
Lauren has been doing an amazing job. I actually just told Nicole, she asked, Lauren said today that she was gonna do some more outreach. Can you pause on that for a second? It's been, we had a lot of interest from Little Canada. Lauren persuaded them, got them to put an article kind of in the front, and we've had a ton of interest from Little Canada. Shoreview usually does, they have their, like, kind of quarterly bulletin that goes out, so it's been in there. I think Maplewood is her next target to get it in there, but we've had a lot of interest in it. But yeah, cities do a lot. And then she's been doing a lot of tabling, and we'll start, she's at an event right now promoting the program, so yeah, she's good job.
Is it still on the application where they hear about the program?
I think we took it off, and I just talked to Lauren today about adding it back on so people can mark where they're hearing about it. Yeah. Yeah, but these city newsletters are doing their job.
Question on the public art, which it looks like it was indicated that it was, you guys approved another public art program?
Yeah.
What is that?
So I think we've had, 2 now. So the first one is for an art piece by Ames Lake, and then there's a small amount for the city of Shoreview. They, instead of doing the No Mow May, it's kind of the big craze, last year or the year before, now they're doing Yards in Bloom. So they got some new signs for people who are doing some native plantings in their yard, and so Shoreview will be handing those out to people in our districts. Yeah.
That's really cool. I thank you, Paige. Any other questions for Paige? Awesome, thank you. We're just flying by. Let's jump to action items. There are 2. Would you like to take over, Tina?
Sure. First, we have the Cottage Place wetland restoration. Actually, I'll let Paige and Erin.
I'll take that one. I can start it.
Yes, different.
Jump in. Yes, we're excited about this one. I think, well, most of our Stephanie, you probably didn't see this, but saw this back in September. And then previously, we had been looking at this area starting in about 2018 for a wetland restoration project. Have worked with City of Shoreview and St. Ogilius Church on the plans, and have all those approvals in place and interest. We had to work through to see some comments here about the trail system, so we had originally proposed that has since been removed. But still, obviously overall great project out here. There's a lot of debris and whatnot that will be cleaned up as part of this, and improvements in the drainage, and then overall habitat improvements of what a buckthorn and other scrub brush out there. That would be.
They're gonna keep that cul-de-sac to cul-de-sac walkway, is that staying? Do you know?
Oh, the trail from the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, to the road,
Westward.
yeah,
And it's on the east side.
yeah.
The one that St. Ogilius pulled. Yeah, no.
Oh,
I
no.
thought you
Oh,
pulled
so
everything.
they're pulling everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
any trail is gone. Yes, yeah. Any exit, like they have a, their daycare there, or you can fix it from the- yeah, go there, so they said they'll just create their own. Yes.
Oh, remembering the prior plan, it was quite nice, said here. But good that we're restoring. With that.
Yes, yeah, our piece of it. Any other big things? Yeah.
Well, just, I mean, I think a couple things that are notable about this, that are a little bit different is the fact that there is debris out there. You saw the phase two, we did a phase one and a phase two report, because when you see weird stuff piled up outside in a section of woods, you worry that there might be contaminants. So we did do some good due diligence to check to see, you know, to the extent that we can know now, it looks like it shouldn't be contaminated material. We will have some contingency plans in place in case they find it during construction. There are protocols that we follow if that happens, but we feel pretty good about what we think is there. One of the things that will be kind of interesting and that we'll have to just see as we go is that our environmental review staff recommend that we don't keep any chunks that are bigger than like 3 inches in diameter on the site. So part of the project that the contractors will be bidding on will be sifting through the soil as they scoop it out and getting rid of some and keeping the rest. So see how that goes, but it'll all be spelled out in the plans and the specs. You probably also noticed we're removing a lot of trees, and so I anticipated that might be of interest or concern. So I had Brendan just type up a couple sentences here for you to put that in perspective. I know whenever people see trees come down, it's concerning. These trees, there's 263 trees larger than 8 inches that are being taken out. So that's a lot, but a lot of them are cottonwood, and other species are box elder, green ash, and elm. The city has reviewed this. They don't have any issues with the tree removals that we're proposing. And the reason we're doing this is that it's important to remove the trees so that we can remove the debris, so that we can enlarge the wetland, and so that we can stockpile the soil on site instead of taking it off. So we need a bit more of a cleaner palette to do this project in the first place. The other thing to really remember here is that it's really no hardwood trees of historical value, and most of these trees grew in after the 70s. So these were not original trees. These are trees that came in after this was starting to not really be so much of a wetland anymore. And we need to be able to get a lot of those out of there so that we can get sunlight down to the soil to restore the plant communities that were a part of this wetland. So, you know, if you get questions about that, you can certainly reach out for more details, but I did want to give you information there because that does tend to be something that people notice. And if they don't understand the context of it, it can be sort of shocking. But you'll also see there are quite a lot of trees that will remain on site, and a lot of plantings and trees that we will be putting into the site that we think will be better species in the long run. So I think those are the big splashy notable things. The fact that we're really cleaning up a bit of a construction materials junkyard back there, and restoring a historic wetland, which is pretty exciting.
So if I understand this correctly, this is a partnership between the watershed, the church, and the city of Shorewood. The watershed is bearing the cost. What is, and then the expected long-term maintenance as well. What is the expected cost for long-term maintenance of a spot that's been overgrown for quite a few years?
We don't have a bid for that yet. That will be a part of the bidding process. Although I guess we haven't quite sorted out yet, Paige, if the 3 years of maintenance after construction will be part of the district's larger cycle, or whether that'll be part of the contract. We haven't figured out yet, right? But that's sort of to be determined. I don't know, Paige, if you have any.
Yeah, I don't think we have an estimate at this point. We could probably come up with that, but it is something that the districts that we would take on versus having the city. You know, sometimes the project that we would hand over to the city, but because we want it to, not that sure we want to do a good job of that, but it's a lot for them to take on, so we'll have that, yeah, either as part of this contract or under our.
And I should say, that may be something that we have as an estimate in our office, and I just don't have it here with you, because Brendan Doherty would have been estimating that for the probable cost estimate. What I can't remember is if that number includes the 3 years of maintenance or not.
So only 3 years.
Well, that's what we would be having a contract
So,
to potentially do.
Yeah, so we could either have, we will be doing maintenance for the lifetime.
After that.
Yeah, but we could have this contractor do the initial 3 years to have it established, which, yeah,
Goes through prioritization, you want to spend just a little bit of time on like weed, address wetlands around, but we prioritize the work, right? If this needed help, we would prioritize the maintenance, or is it every year we do more maintenance?
Oh, I see. Yes, every year we would be out there. Yep, yep. I think the first 3 years is, that's
It's incredible.
key to establishment, so that's, where that factors in.
And then it lessens as time goes on, but there will be some yearly sections.
And kind of a bigger site than our natural resource, they have enough.
Yeah.
Unless you guys want to take this on, but, enough stuff to going on, so that's why we said we would contract it.
I was weeding at the, one of the city rain gardens for the last 3 hours. And I'm
Yeah.
good. So it is a lot of, I mean,
Yeah.
that's small compared to this. Just kind of curious, what were the emotions or, I understand there was pushback from the residents.
Yes. I would say a lot of it was, so, you can see in the aerial, like there's a lot of homes right there. The trail would come pretty close to their backyards. It was all on city property, but it would be a change. A lot of them, there were a lot of concerns over the tree removal that we talked through, and I think have explained, but I expect that once, it'll be a drastic change. So that trail was, definitely, they were concerned about who it would bring into the neighborhood and things like that, so. we
That was
just
the
decided
biggest
to take
thing,
it.
I think. That it was like very polarizing. The trail was clearly of concern, a lot of concern. And the trees were of concern too, but I think when people understood why, then it wasn't such a concern. It was really mostly the trail.
So then the trail was removed.
Yeah.
So there's like probably no future opportunity for that trail for passive recreation or educational opportunity for the residents.
Not that we would do.
They
would be
could
a
do it later. The
yeah.
city or the church
Yeah.
could do it later.
Yeah.
Original plans had this like gathering area, and it's so nice.
Yeah, I saw the loop and.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't quite answer your question about maintenance. I'm gonna see if I can find out what we were anticipating and I'll let you know for the meetings over.
I've got a few questions.
Yeah.
Trees, there are a lot of taken out. I'm not bothered by that, but I'm curious if you can say just a couple words about the process for which trees would be retained. Because I'm not a big fan of cottonwoods. They are native. There are a number of them that were being retained. Ash are probably, get decimated in there by years.
Yep.
Better to work with new species. And so I'm just wondering kind of what thought there was in terms of trees that were retained, because there's a lot of detail
Yeah,
that was put in.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to
sure.
take that out of it.
When I kind of wish Brendan Doherty were sitting next to me, our landscape architect would be able to answer a little better than I, but I know that it's a balance between the size of the tree, the location of the tree, the condition of the tree, and the species. So you're right, like ashes, I mean, if there's an ash tree that's not in an area that's gonna be excavated, it doesn't really need to be touched, we're gonna leave that alone. But if it's, a particularly large tree, like I know that there's some oaks and some other species that we're leaving alone because they were considered, I think the term is like heritage trees or something like that, like at a certain size and species, it's really worthwhile to work your design around that tree. So I know in some circumstances, the shapes of things were changed so that certain trees are left intact. But it also depends on what condition. I mean, a lot of these trees are in kind of tough condition. So they're competing for space, some of them are dying, some of the cottonwoods look pretty ragged. So in some instances, we are taking larger trees. But it's kind of a balance between those four things. But if you need more detail on that, I can certainly get back in touch with Brendan's board.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Just wanted a little bit more background.
Yeah.
I was really pleased to see the results you highlighted, in terms of potential for contamination. I was
Yeah.
really also very pleased to see, the examination at depth. I think you did,
Good.
not borings, but you went down 5 feet, even
Yep.
more, 10
Yeah.
feet, maybe in some places. Is it anticipated that when this is bid for construction, contractor for removal of a lot of the debris, that they would have a provision that they have to test every so often to see if after you
Mhm.
get some of that exposed, that there might not be a pocket
Mm.
or something
Mhm.
that, wasn't
Yeah,
discovered.
well, they certainly, for soils that they have to dispose of off-site, there's certainly protocols for when you need to test and when you don't, and some of that has to do with visual inspection and other metrics, so those things are in place. I think for things that they're stockpiling on site, I think the rules are a little bit different. Obviously, anytime you encounter something that looks or smells worrisome, then there's definitely provisions in the specs that talk about having to test. So yes, I mean, we have some comfort around what's there, but we know, and this happens on other sites around the metro.
Would
you
that
have to
be
watch.
put in the contract, so the contractor is aware of those kinds of
Yes.
provisions?
Yeah.
That's the main.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, we won't know what the cost, obviously, until this goes out to bid and comes back, and hopefully we, get a reasonable response. The estimate is, I guess what's in my head is there is the budget for 500,000 thereabouts. Some money has been spent for the wetland restoration, and it looks to me like the anticipated cost would largely spend all of that. Was that coming from a different budget though?
We have money, so we did budget more, let me just pull that up.
Because there's gonna be other things in the next phases for the actual restoration itself.
So the total budget for that was 700,000. So 500 is what we carried over, and then we levied 200,000. So that just hasn't been put into our accounts yet. We will in July, and then we just.
But all this preparatory construction, debris removal would be coming from.
All of that would be
That's
is
all
in
it
the.
is.
Yeah, part of that.
All one big thing.
Last question is, it's great to see the amount of wetland. It looks like we probably can't get the entire historic, but that's understandable. At 90% design, do we have kind of a vision, an idea of what sort of wetland, what kind of wetland? There's no, that wasn't included. Are we talking an open marsh? Are we talking, a swale, fresh meadow? Is it gonna be a mix? Just trying to get
Yeah.
a sense there.
That's a great question. I'm looking to see if we included that in the memo. Because I know that there is a specific type that they're going for, because it dictated what kinds of plants.
Yeah.
You know how that works better than me. So, yeah, I think, I don't know if I see it in the wetland.
When we were on the site, we had some conversation around, we don't really know historically what this thing had been.
Yeah,
And there was some discussion, well, maybe a little bit of work historic, talking to if there's any older residents or whatever, to get an idea, if there
Yeah.
is some sense. But the site itself is gonna constrain us in certain,
yep.
ways anyhow. So I didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it in here, so let me do a little bit of digging and get back to you. I know I have seen it, but I don't wanna take a guess here.
Sure.
The existing wetland types are seasonally flooded forest and fresh wet meadow,
Yeah.
so I would probably.
Might be somewhat.
Freshwater
reflective.
meadow is what was in my head.
When you take all the debris out, you're gonna have more
Yeah,
probably volume, so.
yeah.
And then I guess my last question is, do we have a good understanding, that's not a good way, but I'm wondering about hydrology. Is there more water coming in from the area, to make sure we've got adequate hydrology?
Sure.
Or is it all just largely based on the outlet, and that outlet is gonna kind of drive whatever this is planned to be?
Sure. So the inflows coming in after the project are the same as the inflows coming in after the project. The difference is that we have included culverts and lots of grading to spread that out, so that we're not getting a straight shot from the north down to the south. So we've changed some of the culverts a little bit on the north side, but only to let water come in and then spread out. We're not changing the outlet. And the main reason for that is that we don't want to change the 100-year bounce in that wetland because it gets close to some homes. So first, do no harm. We're not touching the outlet. And in fact, I mean, I think you saw that in the memo that, you know, we get a little bit, tiny bit of reduction in the 100-year flood level because of the project. So the hydrology is the same. The difference is how it will encompass that site so that the water is spreading out to make it a wetland again. Yeah, so we did modeling, we did some swim modeling to make sure we understood how that would work. We may be, can't remember if this made it into the plans or not, but we had considered changing the trash rack on the southern structure to make it a little bit better to pass flows, to do its job of keeping debris out and passing flows. So that was the only modification we were thinking about making to the outlet. But the water coming in is still the same amount of water coming in. It would just spread out and sit a little longer.
Was there a known history of flooding in that area? Is that where your questioning is coming from, out of curiosity?
I wasn't aware that there was flooding. I guess I was just wondering.
Just curious
if
about-
a wetland, and I'm not sure what kind, you know,
Yeah.
is there an opportunity where we can kind of
Right.
direct more water or just trying to explore what that
Yeah.
goes?
Yeah. So I don't know that I would say it was a known area of flooding, but because we've modeled the whole district now, we know that there's a potential in that area. And I don't even know that it's one of the areas we call like district flooding versus
Yeah,
local. I think it's a local deal. But, you know, first and foremost, if we're gonna change anything, we check to make sure we're not gonna make it worse because first, you know, flooding harm when anchoring, so.
I guess one more question. if I
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
In the 10% design yet to be done, is that gonna be pending, the result of the contractor removing debris?
No. So the 10% that's left is just little design details that we were still working on as of last week. So it's little things like trash racks and tiny changes in grading. Or, I mean, I guess the one thing I could say is we're still putting together the verbiage around the contingency planning with contaminants, for example, and we may decide, okay, well, we think that we should put this much more cost in to cover that kind of thing. So no, I mean, the 90% designation is just saying like, these plans are 90% done. And then when we give you that planning level estimate of cost, that range that we give you is indicative of the fact that it's not quite ready for bid, but it will be, you know, we're planning to post this on the 9th. So I don't anticipate you're gonna see, that range is still what I would stick with, even once we get to 100%, it's still gonna be somewhere in that range.
I guess what I'm wanting to say is, as I mentioned earlier, the probing and
Yep.
kind of examination of the amount of debris, the depth and all that, I think is excellent. It's needed to be done. I'm just wondering on the sort of contingency side,
Sure.
if it gets deeper than was anticipated.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's all part of probably grading. But just trying to get a sense whether or not there might not have to be some kind of design adjustments
Mhm.
after.
Oh.
That's all a known commodity.
Sure, yep.
And
Yep.
so that's what I'm probably fishing for. And then the last
Yeah.
thing I'll just throw out with regard to the, you know, restoring a wetland, and these soils are so disturbed, it's like, might be felt some benefit, consider amending the soils
Mhm.
with higher organic that would
Yeah,
give good plant
yeah.
rooting and so forth. That's all.
Yeah, I know in some areas we're recommending, or we have in the plans that we want imported topsoil to be put in some areas, but I think you're talking about in the wetland itself. Yeah, I'll take a look at
Higher
that.
organic
Yeah,
soils.
yeah, I'll check what our assumptions are in there. I think, I don't remember off the top of my head if we were recommending, putting in some amendments, but I'll take a look at that. As far as your question about what they could find, I mean, this is how I think this could go forward. So one thing that could happen is they get in there and, yep. So it's fine, like, yep, we've got some chunks we need to sift out, but it's clean, meaning we don't have to dispose of it in a licensed landfill. We can dispose of most of it on site. We already have bid amounts for disposing of soil off-site, and we have bid amounts for disposing of soil on-site, and so we have all the numbers we need, and we just go and do it. And we do our pay apps, calculating the actual amount that they placed on site or took off site, and away we go. The other thing that could happen is that they find something contaminated. And if that happens, it's a bit of a stop the presses. We need to know what this is and know what our options are. And if it's something that we can take out and dispose of, and we think the cost is, you know, they tell us what they think it's gonna cost, and we think that seems fair, we want it out of there. Yep, let's do it. And you would be approving and seeing that change order before that change would happen. Another option is, let's say we get a hit of some sort of contamination and the cost is a lot, we change the design. Then we issue a change order that changes the design and the cost. So you would see those things happen.
Sure.
And be in on that discussion. You would have to approve those changes. So, and that's true of this project, it's true of any project. Like, oh, we found a fiber optic line, everybody stop. Now we need to get, you know, this company involved, and this is gonna be more expensive. Board, is it still okay, or do we need to change what we're doing?
Mhm.
So it's true that with this kind of thing, it's a little bit more, it feels a little bit more unknown. But it is part and parcel of these construction projects, and we have protocols set up so that everyone's in the know and still okay with what's going on.
Great.
So, good. It's a good, I mean, that's the question you should ask, but there's a way to do it, so, yeah.
I have one last question. Maybe I'm not familiar with this project, but was there a benefit to the watershed through, I thought I saw a reference to WCA, or is that at one point in time?
Conservation Act.
Yeah. It
Well,
was
we
a
were
possible.
required to go through the permitting for the Wetland Conservation Act. Is that true?
No, I think it was, it wasn't large enough to
To be a
bank.
bank.
Yeah.
So no additional benefit for the watershed
No, we
for
won't
cleaning
have
this
any
up.
credits on
Okay.
this.
Yeah,
All right.
not a formal credit to that program.
It's just a great opportunity for us to rehabilitate one, for sure.
Yeah, and it will add to our, you know, wetland acreage in
Yeah.
our watersheds. That's our ultimate goal, is no net loss. So
Mhm.
that helps.
I had one comment for us to follow up on the maintenance piece. I know in previous meetings, we talked about how do we engage surrounding neighborhoods. This is a unique situation where a lot of houses are near it. If we could find ways to engage them in the maintenance and care of the wetland, that would be really great. But I know it'll come through another permit. I just wanted to say that. So,
I just had a couple comments.
Yep.
I think most of them already been touched on, and it goes along with the trail and maintenance as well. I'm a huge proponent of public access on public lands. I think, I'm not saying the watershed and BAR didn't do any outreach or work on this, but I just want to encourage on future projects to continue outreach and work to gain public access to public lands, rather than the othering. Something this size would really function more as a neighborhood park. You're not going to see people driving for a half an hour away to come use this space. It's really going to be a local benefit. Getting those people in the park, it's actually probably going to keep it cleaner. In my experience, some of the worst dumping is from park neighbors. So I guess that's another caution as we do maintenance, to further education. If we see that happening, you know, we're investing significant money. We don't want this to become a dumping ground again. You've done a good job with the planting plan and providing screening, and I think a trail would have been great, but yeah, keep up the work, and I think just press for that as much as we can would be great in future projects. If we look to other areas such as this, I know we're looking at other wetland restoration things, so.
good questions and comments. Anything else? Awesome. Can I get a motion to approve the preliminary design, estimated costs, and proposed project schedule, and direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents and solicit bid proposals?
I will offer a motion to finalize this planning and ask for bids, solicit bids.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussions or questions?
May I jump in quickly, Val?
Yeah,
I
Lauren.
just have, I have a question about access agreements or MOUs, or if any of that is in place to ensure district's access and for the ongoing maintenance period. I'm wondering if that's been done, and if not, if you need our office to jump in on any of that.
Yes, we do have one with Shoreview, maybe.
Okay.
I'll send that to you just to verify. I think maybe I sent it to Tracy, but
Okay,
I'll verify that. And then we are working on one with the church.
great.
We'll have
Is
that, so I'll
it-
make sure you see that.
Is the culvert on the church's property or Shoreview?
Cover is church.
The one,
Oh,
well,
there's- yeah.
which one? The one I
Oh.
talked about, so there's some that are on, I believe, the church property and some that are on Shoreview's property.
And the
One-
district will be responsible for ongoing maintenance for all of them?
So the structures will be the cities, or
Okay.
as they are now, yeah.
Okay,
I would think that, and actually, I'm gonna take back what I just said. I think those culverts on the north have to be the cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay,
So those will still be maintained by the city, yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Make a note.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, we're at a voting phase. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Let's move to budget transfer requests. Tina, are you covering that up?
Yep, so first of all, that board meeting date should say May 1st, 2024. I'm not sure why I missed that on a copy and paste. So this is a issue that actually our auditors found because we make our first payment for this fund for the Beltline tunnel system is due February 1. So the check was actually cashed in 2023. And so it's recorded on our 2023 audit. And so they asked some questions about it. So we got talking, and what we found is that we had a cash flow issue. And so this was my problem. I should have levied more in 2023 to cover that first payment in 2024. And so what they suggested is that we do a transfer of funds into that debt service fund from our contingency to cover that payment as well as the first payment of 2020. So that is. Then we should be on track.
The current levies, we should definitely.
Yeah.
Any questions for Tina on this? I believe it requires 2 signatures, so Ben, after the meeting, I'll pass this to you. Okay, may I have a motion to approve resolution 2401?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Wonderful. Further discussions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Moving forward to board discussion topics. Does anyone have a topic that they would like to bring up today? Last month, we had really good discussions on chloride. So I'm just curious. How are you going? Ben, if you talk to the CAC about some of those projects, do you have any feedback on some of those as you took it back to the CAC or others who might have been in attendance?
Yeah, the CAC meeting was, I believe it was April 23rd, a couple of weeks ago. They discussed a myriad of ideas with the knowledge that the board was supportive of the low, no salt discussion, bringing that to the forefront, as well as the adopted drain was a hit last year. It sounds like those are the two they're going to be moving forward with for the CAC booth at Waterfest. So all good things. They were brainstorming how to do more salt stuff, and I think they were going to reach out to Stephanie. I'm not sure if they did or not.
I'm sorry. It's okay.
Sorry. Could you
Oh,
repeat that last part?
the CAC had mentioned that they were planning on reaching out to you regarding salt and then some adopted drain questions, and I wasn't sure if they had or not.
All right.
No,
Timing was
no,
bad.
no, that's just how it happens. I was kind of curious as we get into discussions on the shoreline piece, if maybe in future watersheds or whatnot around educating care of those shorelines might be an interesting thing to add later. It doesn't have to be now, but that would be an interesting thing. Any other board discussion topics? Just wanted to check on. No?
You're good. But you did skip the training.
Oh, shoot. Sorry, Lauren.
I won't take it personally.
You were important about
No, I really don't have much to add. We're continuing to try to get appraisals for the Fish Creek project, which has proven pretty difficult. So that's been a focus of our office, as well as just handling the agreements that come through. So not much to report, which is always a good thing.
Can you say a little bit more, Lauren? I think in the packet it discussed that it's been charging to find an appropriate appraiser. Is it unique? I mean, what is it that's unique about this that can't find somebody?
I think there are a limited number of appraisers that can do this type of work with easement specific appraisals in a kind of a different set of circumstances with where the land actually lies and what the work is to be done. It's different than, say, valuing a driveway easement for your neighbor's property. So I think it requires an appraiser who's a little bit more willing to try to understand the project, as well as just looking at the survey and figuring out what the value of that is. Barr gave us some good recommendations that we followed up on, and one was willing to do it but wasn't available to have the appraisals done until August, which I know this is hoping to be bid out, I think, in June. So I have a phone call scheduled with someone I've worked with before for the Valley Branch Watershed District tomorrow, and I'm hoping he will be willing to get it done.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Let's go back to board discussion topics one more time. No, you're good, you're good. I felt so bad. I skipped through it. I remember they don't miss that. Okay.
I don't have, well, I would say that it may be worth revisiting the communication piece that we had a great presentation last week. Lauren's doing a lot of outreach right now. And it would just seem to me that I've been in a couple of meetings for work that it's kind of a shifting, a very dynamic kind of world out there in terms of communication. And I think it'd be worth having that come back at some point for a little more discussion.
Mm-hmm. Hey.
All right.
New reports and presentations. I think we are transitioning to the Phelan Creek Daylight Project update.
Yeah, we can have Gabby come in. I'll have her. Take that out of this.
It's a fun show.
Yeah, what's wrong with?
Oh, I guess I didn't even.
I did enjoy the exchange.
It was out front.
Yeah.
Joe and I have to discuss.
Oh.
Yeah, you know. If it'll reach.
So Stephanie, while they're waiting, so that cost, that estimated cost for Cottage Place did assume $12,000 a year for maintenance for 3 years. So what we need to figure out is whether we actually want the contractor to bid on that or whether it's gonna go straight to the district.
Yeah,
So that cost did include that.
yeah, my concern is the description of the location seemed like it was quite, had quite a few invasives already in there.
Yeah,
So
a lot of them will be taken out during the questions. So at least
with the
theirs
soil
will be-
removal and everything else.
Yeah.
All right, well, Gabby is here from Walk on TPS. Well, we've been in a lot of discussions over the last several years about the Phelan Creek Daylighting Project, and thought it was time, especially with the new board and a lot of new faces, to have her come and get you all up to speed on the project, and then talk about the future of the ownership of the outlet structure as well as other components of this project.
So hi everyone, again, my name is Gabby Newman. I come from the Forest County Potawatomi community up in northern Wisconsin, but for the past almost year and a half, I've been the environmental restoration manager at Waikantipeawaiankapi, formerly Lower Phelan Creek Project. And one of the big projects that I'm working on there is the Daylighting of Phelan Creek Project. And so today I'm just going to give just some general project updates, a little bit of project background, and then some project updates where we're at right now, and then I'll get into a little overview of that feasibility, the feasibility memo for the outlet structures and whatnot. I'll get into that a little bit, and then I think we can open it up for questions after that. And I do apologize, I do not have any sort of hydrology or water engineering background, so I will do my best talking through the memo and the different feasibility options. But yeah, right now I'll just get into the project a little bit. So Lower Phelan Creek used to run from the south end of Lake Phelan all the way to the Mississippi River. You can see it on this map. It's that very light blue line that's not outlined in black. That is the historical route of the creek. This creek was really important for Dakota people and other indigenous people to be able to access wild rice beds, specifically in White Bear Lake. So they would, travel up through the Mississippi River, up the creek and through the Phelan chain of lakes to get to the wild rice beds. The creek also used to connect to a sacred site that our organization also stewards within the Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary, which is the Waikantipe Cave. And about 100 years ago, when was it, the 1930s, sorry, the creek was put into a pipeline, which is that pinkish purple line over to the right on the map there. The creek was put underground to make way for development and infrastructure with incoming settlers. And so that's where our organization stepped in under the name Lower Phelan Creek Project back in 1997. Our organization was started as a neighborhood group that found out about the creek and wanted to do advocacy, public education, try to gain support to bring the creek back up to the surface. So why does our organization want to daylight the creek? Couple points: to reconnect with water and nature, reconnect especially that connection from the Phelan chain of lakes back to the Mississippi, bring that water connection back up to the surface. And with bringing the creek back up to the surface, of course, bringing back natural ecosystems and habitat for aquatic, riparian, and upland species such as migratory birds, pollinators, insects, other urban wildlife as well. And also this bringing the creek back gives a chance for especially indigenous people to bring back some of those plant medicines that may have been lost from the landscape, that are plant medicines or traditional foods that may have historically been along the creek path. And so our organization has been working a lot with community engagement over the past almost 2 decades. So here's just kind of a little timeline of when community engagement really picked up. It started with the planning and preparation for the Sweet Hollow Master Plan, which kind of just, there was a couple surveys that were done to gauge public interest in creek restoration. This also allowed us to be able to conduct a feasibility study, which is, go back really quick, which in the feasibility study, it outlined the most feasible route for the creek, which is that path that's outlined in those black lines there. And from that, from 2020 to 2022, was more surveys to kind of gauge communities' interest in where they would like to see the creek daylit first, different features, why daylighting was important to the community, things like that. And then in 2022, we received $3.3 million from the Lesser Sam's Outdoor Heritage Fund to work on the first quarter mile of the creek, otherwise known as reaches 7 and 8. We also have been calling it phase 1 of the project as well. And then 2023 is where I really stepped in with the community engagement around reaches 7 and 8, trying to gauge people's interest in different habitat and non-habitat features that they would like to see within this daylighting project. Also reiterating the importance of daylighting to the community as well. And so currently, this is a rendering from our partners at Damon Farber. Just a kind of more pretty version of that first map. So yep, reaches 7 and 8, we're working up there, that first quarter mile. And this is going to be obviously a multi-decade project as we work through all these different reaches and eventually connect back to the Mississippi through Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. So the current conditions, if you guys haven't been out to the project site at all, it's currently all completely lawn space. So there are some boulevard trees going along Johnson Parkway and along the residential streets and neighborhood houses as well. But this is the current site conditions. I'll just walk super quick through some of the early, so these are pre-60% design engineering renderings from our partners at Interflu. And so some structures that are being designed are some culverts going underneath going underneath Wheelock Parkway and Maryland Avenue. There's going to be a weir structure. Let's see where. Sorry guys, I'm doing my best to read these. Again, I don't come from an engineering background. But there is going to be a weir structure located over here, which is going to control the flow essentially into the creek. We are anticipating I think the project goals or the CFS goals for this project are anywhere from 3 to 5, I think is what our water engineers have been talking about would be most feasible for this first phase 1 of the creek. There's just a couple more zoomed in pictures of some of the different sections here. And then we would temporarily, what we would be proposing as well, but we're not going to get a chance to talk about this today, is tie-in into an existing stormwater belt line temporarily until we can work through design for the further downstream reaches and figure out a timeline for construction for those. So I just wanted to share some of the renderings that, again, our partners at Damon Farber have created about what this space might look like with the creek restoration. So this was our 30% design, and this is a cross section. And then this is kind of our pre-60% design, where we're looking at where different habitat types are going to be. We're going to be working through the plant selection and where some of these non-habitat features such as a nature-based playground are going to be located, other gathering spaces, trail system as well through here. So that's where we're at with the project. We're anticipating, if everything stays on schedule, we're anticipating 60% design to be completed July of this year, with the public engagement event happening towards the end of July. And then we'll be moving into 90% design, which will probably start around July and end September. I should have put October just to, give us a little extra time, but and that'll be the permitting phase. And then we're anticipating 100% design to be early 2025. looking somewhere around February to April of next year. With bidding to follow soon after that, and construction to follow spring, end of spring, beginning of summer, around there. Another portion of this project is we are proposing a renaming of the creek. So here's just the timeline of the steps that we need to take to propose this name change for the creek. So our next step that we're going to be working on is on May 17th. We're meeting with the 4 Dakota tribes to go over this proposed renaming, as well as their preferred names for this creek, which will ultimately kind of play the biggest role in eventually what the creek name will change to. So with that, that's all I have for the kind of project updates, where we're at, things like that. You guys want me to go over super quickly the feasibility memo that was sent out? Okay. So, sorry, I had to highlight stuff in here to make sure, oh, and I'm not sharing it. So our partners at Interflu created this memo to go over I guess the different options and the feasibility of different options for the water source for the creek. So some design criteria that were considered during this evaluation process are the headwater elevation, and these are what will make the project most successful under our organization's project goals, as well as feasibility engineering goals as well. So headwater elevation, water source coming directly from Lake Phalen, again to restore that connection between Lake Phalen and the Mississippi eventually. Target creek flow rate between 0 and 6 cubic feet per second. And let's see, so going over some of the alternatives that were presented, the first one being tying into the stormwater belt line that is out at the site right now. This alternative was found to be infeasible by our partners at Interflu, mainly due to the elevations of the headwater being lower than in the target range, which would not provide flow to the creek under all conditions. And this alternative also has impacts on existing infrastructure. And I'm so sorry, guys, I'm really gonna do my best to walk through this, but this is all very.
Maybe I'll just jump in real quick
Yeah.
and explain that this alternative analysis is being done because they're proposing another outlet to Lake Phalen for the water source. And so the DNR is through their permitting process requires there to be an alternatives analysis to look at the options for how that water will be drawn from the lake. And one of the questions we had was, could you use our existing structures? Is there opportunity to pull from that location? So that's what this, I don't know if we really need to go through a lot of it, but they did look at the options of tying into our structures, tying into the storm sewer just downstream of our structures. And then the last option, and the one they find the most viable for their project, is to put in a new outlet that would draw from the lakes.
Yeah.
Is this part of the work that back in 2021, we kind of paid for as they'd gone through the design phases 7 and 8, or helped pay for through the planning grant?
Yeah, so we provided a grant, it was $10,000 for, I think, some initial.
Okay, so this is.
This is,
separate.
yeah,
Thank you.
separate, yeah, that's been, yeah.
Was there a link to this, or is this something we can see a
I don't
copy
think
of?
we've seen this. one.
No, and this was, I would say, well, we've received it, but it hasn't gone to the DNR through their permitting process yet. It would be more of a draft.
So we would likely see something of this detail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should come through permits, right? Or would this come through?
I mean, it might be referenced in the permitting phases. Like I said, this would be for the DNR's permit of a public waters permit for the draw from the lake. But it certainly probably will come through in our packet. So that's one thing I'll just jump into and say, you know, as we talk about this project, we have a few different roles we're playing. We've been, this will come through our permitting program for a myriad of reasons. We've had the request, you know, to look at operation and maintenance of structures like the outlet. You know, Gabby mentioned that this project will tie into our belt, so it's pulling from the lake, and then they'll need to tie in, meaning put a, you know, a structure, a new connection into our belt line, storm sewer system. So all that will come through in our permitting as well.
So what's being kind of conceptually envisioned at this point? Does the LaSart's money largely fund the project?
Yep, that is what's funding the design phase for reaches 7 and 8 here. And so within this design phase, our water engineers have been, as with their progression in the design, have been looking at the alternative where we are putting an additional outlet on the lake rather than tying into existing infrastructure. Yeah.
So that funding would cover final design as well as construction?
Yep. And the construction covers only the kind of basic restoration of the creek and the habitat.
Gabby, can you comment on land ownership, like how this is working with the
Yep. Yep. So with our proposal for an additional outlet on the lake, the ownership of the land where the outlet would be, and the outlet would be under City of St. Paul Parks and Recreation. And so kind of what I came here today to ask of the board is for Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District to take on the maintenance and operations of a proposed second outlet. If that is the decision that between as we talk through with the Watershed District about you know, going through these different alternatives, but that's the ask that I'm essentially coming here today.
And the creek at through reaches 7 and 8 is also City of St. Paul property.
Yep.
And we've partnered in the past with cities where cities will ask us, is that correct, to do some of the maintenance for the outlet, or at least help them?
Or we maintain
what
and
other-
operate the outlets because we put them in.
Yeah, I was just kind of
Or
curious.
we made adjustments to them recently too. So the current outlets that are in Lakeville, and we operate and maintain. And that mostly consists of visits to check trash rack, make sure there's no debris, anything clogging the outlets.
Maintenance.
And then we have, trying to think, controls on that lake, right? So we have a lot of moving pieces in there, so we're making sure those are operating. Okay. But that is our typical maintenance.
What about,
I got a bunch of questions, and I'll try to really
Yeah.
reserve the ones needed, because I expect there will be more discussion. I'm curious about the outlet, if it's envisioned that it would be an outlet that would not really have controls, because we have a lot of controls in the other outlets that already exist.
Yeah.
So it'd be a pretty simple one.
So there won't be any nothing like we have where we can go on our phones and change elevations. Everything that we do, is above the normal water level. They'd be installing this at the normal water level. We, haven't been through all the design qualifications, about that outlet in particular, but we'd anticipate needing some sort of, control, at least manual control to shut it off if there was some reason that it needed to be stopped from flowing into that creek area. As you know, this is a high flood risk area. And so we have a lot of concerns about that. We're making sure as we're helping, review some of this design as it comes to us, that we're not making situations worse for flood risk, anything add to that?
No, I mean, I think that's the main piece. And then there's remaining questions on how exactly the creek then ties back into the belt line. So there's that piece, and that's still a topic of discussion, so.
That would be under our maintenance, correct? Because we maintain the belt line.
Well, we maintain the belt line, and so that will be have to be another request to us, because it'd be their project that would tie into it. So we'd have to talk through all that as well. That's, to be honest, I mean, that's our bigger concern. The outlet and, drawing water from the normal water level of Phelan is, I mean, we certainly wanna, talk through some of those concerns about the outlet, but that tying into the belt line is bigger to it.
And that tying in is entirely new, there's not an existing trunk main that we could kind of tap into.
I mean,
Well, why don't we generalize that question, say how many other tap-ins to the belt line do we have for that we've approved?
I mean, there are, storm sewers, city storm sewer systems that connect into the belt line. As far as, a private applicant through a permitting program, I don't recall ever permitting that. So it's, there's a lot of,
New.
concern about, how that looks. We do have a rule G in our rules that addresses connections to the belt line. So that's something that will be looking for as well.
Existing connection would also have the potential to back up in a severe event. I don't think that would be the best solution. I'm sure you talked this through.
Well, and even a new connection
Yeah.
too, so that is something that will be.
Is this
And that's
envisioned
kind of
as a,
topic of discussion.
is it envisioned as a temporary connection that's eventually going to be closed as this moves
Well,
further downstream?
Yeah, that's a good question, and Gabby, I think I was gonna ask you just to comment on that piece as well. Like, what is the future timeline for the next phases?
The future timeline, I cannot speak on exact timeline, but it's going to be, I think from our water engineers, and it all depends on, what funding we can get and how quickly we can move through design for the further downstream reaches. But I've heard our water engineers give an estimated timeline of anywhere from, about 5 to maybe around 15 years, before we're able to start construction on further reaches downstream.
So if I'm projecting forward to reach 6, what would be the plan if you could only accomplish half of reach 6, reach 5 versus the rest of the pathway? Have y'all just talked about that? In terms of, so you have reach 7 and 8, there's a clear termination path to the belt line today. There's reach 6 and reach 5, which seems to extend out. And I'm just curious, what it looks like is you've done it in phases. So what would phase 2 look like, I guess, would be my first question. And then how would we manage the water back into either a channel or another creek to get to the Mississippi? Have we all had discussions about that?
We have not. There's only been, I think, 10% design done for reaches 5 and 6. We are anticipating that there's going to be certain sections of the creek that are going to have to be piped, just because of current infrastructure that's in the area. But yeah, I'm sorry, I can't answer.
That's okay.
We haven't come to that phase yet.
And just one point about that is that, so when it does move on to reach 6, part of that is in our watershed, and then it goes into the rest of the creek is in capital region. But there is, so when it does go to reach 6, it has been said that they'd have to make some changes to the belt line in order to get the creek to flow over the belt line. So there will be future discussions, and we have asked that Interflu address how that works, how that will work, so that we have some assurances about the future as well.
The whole area is relatively flat. And I suspect that there's been a lot of historical reading that's resulted in that. So flow is an important consideration.
Yeah.
What's the criticality of making a decision on ownership for the outlet today versus while the plans are progressing more? Out of curiosity.
Are we making a decision today, or?
That's what I'm kind of
I think
curious
what
about.
I thought it was gonna be a future, because it's not an action item.
That's what I was curious
So
about. I just wanted
What
clarity.
I wanted to hear from the board was any concerns, any major red flags that would prohibit us from moving forward with that plan. if you felt comfortable enough for us to continue discussions with them, and then we would definitely work out O&M plans and agreements and talk about design of that outlet and what that looks like for the best for maintenance and operation. And as long as you're comfortable with us doing that, then it's basically we wanted you to understand what the project is and how we're continuing to work with them and their
We've had other programs where it crosses watershed boundaries or watershed district boundaries. Generally, we've seen them with a bit more maturity, I think, in terms of the planning before we make a lot of decisions on things. I'm just kind of curious, is the update's really good. I'm all for the cultural significance. I think that really speaks to me. That resonates really strongly with me. It's when I look at what the long-term vision is compared to what we have to set up temporarily, both in ours and capital region, it just makes me a little hesitant. I would say that definitely is a concern. It doesn't hurt to keep working on things, but at least that's definitely where my concern is. When you look at just the other reaches through, I'm asking myself, what does capital region think? We've done other things like the Gold Line, where it's crossed many boundaries. There's a lot more maturity in the plan, so it's easier to understand.
You want to speak to your work with Capital Region?
Yeah, Capital Region is, the conversations that we've had with them, they're very supportive of this project and helping us kind of work through eventually when we get to the further reaches, how to make as much of the creek on the surface as possible. We are in conversations with them in terms of the Purple Line, that project, because around the Arcade Street station area is going to be a impact or kind of project crossing between the creek project and the Purple Line. So we've been in conversations in that area, figuring out how the EMPs for the Purple Line are going to tie into the creek eventually, things like that. But yeah, they've been very supportive of this project.
And the Purple Line is a bus rapid transit project that will reach from St. Paul to White Bear Lake eventually. We did hear that they're getting started again probably this summer and fall. Is there any impacts on our reaches from the Purple Line?
Yes, there's that section over by, let's see, I can actually pull it up on the map, over by Magnolia. Oops, yeah, in this section over here, they're looking into, they gave us a couple different alternatives for kind of the route of the Purple Line, and just kind of gauging how that would impact our project, and we haven't seen any way that it's going to impact. So, and I have no clue if they're going to move ahead with that design or not.
I mean, I think it's a great project. My mind is going more to the specifics of temporary versus, needing more information than what we have. So in no way would I say, no, let's not continue supporting and investigating this.
That's kind of where I just want to see more detail.
Yeah.
That's really where my heart's at.
And kind of long-term anticipated maintenance cost on us, just to understand that
Just
better.
to preface, Gabby, we're working through Beltline issues, the wrong word, but some things that have happened and impacted the Beltline where there's some pretty serious work through, and so tapping into it definitely just raises some flags. Supportive of the cause, supportive of what we're trying to do. It's just want to see more detail. So it's like, yeah, keep talking together, but I'm concerned, I guess is the way I put it.
I say that's Brett too. If you have anything you want to add, I anticipate that this will be a group effort amongst, because of the land ownership and operations and maintenance. And, the city is working with Gabby and her group on the developers agreement for the creek itself, as well as, potential future maintenance of that part of the system. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I guess I would say again, my name is Brett Newsong, landscape architect and project manager. I've worked with the city for 10 years. The city is supportive of the initiative. We've got other plans that we've been working with, including Gabby mentioned the Purple Line. We also have the reaches further down, which is Sweet Hollow. So this is a plan that is accepted by the city. I think there are, as a partner, we're supportive, but we are relying on other partners like watershed, also Cap Bridges watershed to figure out how can this be implemented. Knowing that the city is the current owner of the property and what comes with that in terms of maintenance, not just, you know, water maintenance, ecological maintenance, but then upland with natives. You know, I think our role with the city is to be supportive, utilizing guidance with our ordinances, some of our design that we want to see with the city, making sure that the community is supportive. So this is within a regional park. That council is also requiring that we do an amendment to this project because it was not in the long-range plan. So that's the role of the city. We're also looking for our partners to help figure out some of these maintenance and ownership discussions.
Say that I've heard bits and pieces about this for many years, and I'm really pleased that you've come and presented where it's at now. It's good to hear the progress that's been made. I guess conceptually, I think it's has a great potential, but there's a lot of probably detailed questions that certainly need to be worked through, and it seems like there might even be a smidge of it is doable. I'd like to hope it is, but there's more work.
Are y'all getting the support you need to answer some of these detailed questions, Debbie?
Yes, kind of the, I guess, issue that we're kind of running into is the kind of scope of work with Interfluve, and doing the kind of some of these alternative analyses, progressing those designs. Just on our end, we just need to, it's looking like we'll probably need to find some more funding for this kind of portion of the design phase.
Thoughts?
I don't know, I would love to see it come through. I know that there's a real healing in the cities that they have seen even portions of their natural waterways daylighted. And I agree, I think the hardest part is how do you tie it back into to the Beltline, which may be a permanent requirement, because I think the rest of it is very, I would love to see it. It's very difficult. Yeah.
I'll just say, I think it's a great project. I have significant concerns that until we can effectively answer, particularly the Beltline, every day that goes by that we're quasi-supportive makes it a lot harder to say no if it gets to the end of this. And our analysis is that the Beltline interceptor is a $1 million ask, or it's a giant project that's going to put our just long-term maintenance at risk. So I'm just going to ask that we, to the degree possible, we accelerate our analysis, understanding that yours is subject to funding that you may or may not get with Interfluve and others. So I'm very interested, particularly on the Beltline. And if it turns out we can't do it, we should say no as quickly as possible, so that these folks in the cities can start looking at alternatives.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment we have. So we've been very involved since last August, September, in reviewing each phase of the design, and we've given, Brandon spent a lot of time and hours, and Aaron some too, on providing comments back, reviewing the changes that are made, and it's always the Beltline and the outlet is the two things that are the biggest questions that we've had for them. So there has just been a recent round of comments that I think we're still waiting to hear the final response to. But I understand what you're saying. I think we'll definitely want to see those questions get answered before we give a reach.
I don't, just to build on the Beltline pieces with the different phases, I thought I heard, correct me if I'm mistaken, that maybe in a second phase, even though it's part of capital region, there might be some redirection of the belt line needed. Did I hear that correctly?
So the concern is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the creek then on the surface would flow over the belt line. And in order to have enough clearance for that to happen, they'd have to change basically a
That's
section of the belt line shape. Is that correct? In
Keep
order
the
to
capacity,
cement,
change the shape. Yeah.
which would include, you know, having them dig out and replace a section
Yeah,
of the
big
belt
section.
lines.
That's what I would just wanted to.
Yeah, and that would be for the future phase, reach 6. Which would still be in our watershed for that portion of it, and then it flows.
And then it flows off.
I mean, to build on what Matt was saying, it seems like having more maturity in those later phases is also very critical, not just the temporary connection to the belt line here, because that could also be quite expensive.
Has it been looked at as this is a permanent connection until future phases are complete and ready to be diverted elsewhere?
I mean, I think for permitting purposes, it's a connection, it's not.
It have to be
it wouldn't
considered
matter.
permanent.
Okay, it would be designed as permanent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it'd have to meet the design qualifications of connecting to the belt line, which would be like a permanent connection. Whether or not it stays that way forever is.
Would that? Maybe this isn't, the connection, obviously, there's gonna be some excavation, there's gonna be some design, there's gonna be obviously costs. To then come back and rework that to allow elevationally that reach 6. Is that something that has been thought about, discussed, to do it all at one time? Or not?
I don't think that's really been discussed. Yeah.
No, what we've asked is that we see what their plans are for that future phase for the adjustments to the belt line. Making sure that it is feasible for them to do that in the next phase, but not to construct it. Basically, with what we haven't talked about.
Yeah, I mean, some concepts have been discussed, like how they're thinking that could happen, but in terms of like a alternatives analysis or plan sheets to that extent, not exactly, not yet. Yeah. If we've talked more about the new outlet and that part of it so far.
Sounds like you're taking many first steps on the long journey, really. And we just, keeping the end in mind, we gotta figure out whether or not it makes sense at the end, but we encourage you to continue working with us. Yeah, please do that. Because it'd be awesome if you saw it, the bike paths and everything else. Any further questions for Gabby? Good job, thank you so much.
Thank you. Aaron, I'll just ask you too, do you feel like you have a direction as you move forward with?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think
discussions.
I think the concerns that you've all voiced are the concerns that we felt, so, yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's helpful to hear. Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
worth to have just a project status update on how progress is going with this, out of curiosity?
Yeah, we could add it, we certainly could add it to our
Yep.
PSR.
It might be a good thing just to keep tabs
Maybe
on
make
it.
it something to spend. A little more time on.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Welcome back to the table. Thanks. All right. Jumping to the shorelines, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Pat and I have been working on this for the last little bit. So it came about, paper came out last summer about vanishing shorelines. We'll discuss that a little bit. I'm sure you all know Pat and I just started last June. We both interned here. We are pretty familiar with all of our shoreland work, but we don't know the entire story. There's others in this room that have a lot of institutional knowledge that can help us fill in the gaps. But we did our best to look back in the files and talk to other staff to look and see what's our shoreland work been in the past, present, and future. We're happy to talk about, kind of what we're currently working on, and sort of our vision for the future, and leave some time for discussion and questions at the end. So we've broken up our talk, talked a little bit about the paper and some of the background where that came from. We're gonna talk about our work on shorelands, specifically the natural resources team and where we work on public shorelands, as well as some of the research that our predecessors did. And also our work on private shorelines. We have some loose recommendations, more so ideas that we've come up with, again, just getting our feet under us in the less than a year or so. With that, the next slide. So this came about, it was a collaboration, a partnership between the University of Minnesota Extension, Department of Natural Resources, Bowser Board of Water and Soil Resources, Soil and Water Conservation Districts. The only watershed district I saw involved was the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. There was several nonprofits and others that got together, put this paper out in July of 2023 last year. In summary, the news isn't great. About half of Minnesota's natural shorelines have already been lost. Natural shorelines continue to vanish at an alarming rate. This causes, of course, degrading water quality, and we lose valuable habitats for aquatic and terrestrial wildlife. We've been trying to protect these shorelines for over 50 years, and our standards and regulations haven't done a great job. Other efforts such as education have been marginally successful. And just to note, I worked at Board of Water and Soil Resources before I came here. My coworker Dan Shaw was working on this paper. I wasn't super familiar with it. I knew they were working on it, and then actually I didn't even know that it came out. And I have heard very little about it. Like, we've produced this big paper showing vanishing shorelines, and there just hasn't really been any momentum from this partnership since then. So I just wanted to note that.
So I know when we were chatting about this came through the Minnesota watersheds. They did a quick walkthrough with a couple of other watersheds choosing to make pretty hard line choices on how to control this, or to be more purposeful and like saying, we're gonna have this much coverage. Have y'all, or maybe as a separate step later, just look and benchmark if other watersheds are taking like more definitive rules or actions to it? Would be really nice.
Yeah, as part of this, we did look at that, and it didn't make the final cut of the presentation, but we can certainly discuss some of that.
I would love it with supplemental information. That the comparison base is always nice.
Sure. We provided a link in the board packet to the report, so if you had a chance to look through it, but that's a very quick summary. They provide recommendations at the end. We've looked at those recommendations, and at the end of our presentation, kind of lined them up with what the watershed's been doing and what we've done in the past, and where we can grow, as well as looking at the bottom two there, 5 and 6, creating incentives for shoreline protection and restoration and enhancing funding. I really see that creating incentives as something more so that maybe wouldn't be, I guess it could be a watershed district, but that's really talking about easements and protecting shorelines that aren't already developed, ways to incentivize landowners from keeping them in a natural state. Whereas enhancing funding would be providing more grants for people to restore shorelines. There's probably other ideas out there as well. Next slide. So the good news is we have really led the way in protecting and restoring shorelands. So I have to give a shout out to Bill Bartoje, my predecessor, my mentor when I was an intern here. He did a lot of great work. I had mentioned this report to him, and he was a little taken aback that nobody ever contacted Ramsey-Washington about this, because we've done so much focused work on shorelines. Those work started in 1998. You'll see an asterisk there. We did do shoreland work prior to then, but it was really more for flood prevention and flood mitigation. Later on, when Bill got hired, and also the whole practice of planting native plants and controlling invasive species was really an emerging practice back in that time. So when Bill came on, we had flood control berms that then got converted to native plants. And then once he was on board, he really took other work and looked for opportunities where we can restore these shorelands and protect existing shorelands that are in good shape. From there, we built the Natural Resources Program. We're very fortunate to have 3 full-time staff that are all here with us tonight. We have 3 seasonal interns. A lot of our work focuses on shorelands, and we'll show that here shortly. Of course, it's not just us that's doing this work. Our grants are targeted to shoreland owners oftentimes. Education, SAGE is constantly working with students and focusing on shorelands. We're having students come out to help us plant on a shoreland in a couple of weeks. And of course, Lauren and her outreach and Waterfest and many other things like that. Of course, we kind of know Natural Resources Program focused on public lands, all these other programs at the district are a little more focused on private lands, but there's certainly overlap there as well. Did you have a comment, Bill?
No, there's a bunch of deer just ran.
Oh.
I apologize.
The key to our success is the bottom sentence there as a commitment to long-term maintenance. We talked about that a little bit just now with Cottage Place wetlands. Everybody knows it's great to go in and do a project. So it's another thing to provide long-term maintenance to make sure that it stays in great shape. So just really quickly, it's hard to fit all of this great work on one slide on a timeline. Kind of our major works highlighted along the top there. Other significant projects along the bottom. So it's hard to divvy those up, but you can see way off in prehistory of pre-1999. Those were really more of our flood prevention. You know, we have the berms on Tanners. Jarvis Mill Ponds back here was created. There's certainly shorelands there. Battle Creek berm and others. Jarvis Beach right down the road, and then getting into Lake Phelan that we'll talk more about here. Keller Islands, Casey Lake, Keller Creek. Wetland A has been a big priority in recent years. That's really great up in Snail Lake Regional Park. You'll see the gap 2012, 2018. Does anybody know what was going on in that time for natural resources? That was the big Keller Golf Course, 30 acres of restoration, which there's certainly ponds and buffers out there. Lake Owasso, and then we're currently planning significant work on Keller Lake this year. Just to throw all that up on a map, the red highlighted areas are our shoreland, no, I have that backwards, yellow, shoreland, yes. Yellow is our shoreland areas that we work on. The reds are not considered shorelands. We manage about 54 acres of shoreland currently compared to 47 acres of these other sites. You might ask, how did we prioritize these areas? It was just really opportunity based, but also partnerships. We have a really good partnership going with the City of St. Paul around Lake Phelan and other sites. Ramsey County more in recent years. We're always looking to expand those partnerships. Some of it also is publicly owned land versus privately owned lands. Lake Phelan is all publicly owned all the way around it. It's a park, whereas several of our lakes. I'm thinking of Jarvis, Coleman, Owasso. The majority of that is privately owned. Maintenance, we do also contract out maintenance on several of our shoreline sites. Everybody familiar with Lake Phelan? If not, we'd love to have you out there for a tour. Just due to years of mismanagement, neglect in the late 1990s, Lake Phelan was in really rough shape. Slumping banks, gullies, erosion, people feeding ducks, so vegetation never grows in an area. Not only was this a water quality issue, wildlife habitat issue, but it was so severe that it was a public safety and health issue. The watershed saw this opportunity. City of St. Paul saw that this was an issue. They teamed up, and from 2001 to 2010, next slide, please. We restored over 1.6 miles of shoreline. It's one of the largest and I would say most successful shoreline restorations in the state. Again, a big part of that is the routine monitoring and maintenance that's taken place since 2001. It's been the site of many tours, classes, and events. Our crew spends a lot of time out on Lake Phelan. We just did a prescribed burn in that area last week before. And then City of St. Paul is also did a prescribed burn out there last week. So still partnering with them. This is where I cut my teeth as an intern. It's really set the bar high for me, not only this, but our other restoration sites in the district, and that we can have the intense focus and make them great instead of walking in, doing a project and walking away. We continue to maintain them. And so throughout my career, I have often pointed to the Lake Phelan shoreline restoration as how to do a restoration project the right way. So, and I know others that have worked here and come through our doors, so felt the same way. Handing it over to Pat. No, not yet. Really quickly, because I know we're getting late here. Bill, Simba, others were very busy with various research projects. They did this lake shoreline classification system in 2008, 2009. In a nutshell, going around to privately owned shorelands, what would it take to restore a shoreline? So there's an example and some of the aspects that they look at to say, is this feasible to restore? If so, how much funding is it going to cost to restore it? That one, you know, there's a lot that goes into this, but now we know, you know, that one would be a pretty easy project to restore. I don't know all the details compared to somebody that maybe has hardscaping all the way down to the shore, or huge amounts of rock riprap, or other things going on. So this was not fully completed. They didn't build a functional program, but this and the next and go one more. They could create maps like this one, Coleman Lake, showing high potential for restoration, low potential of restoration. They did this survey project just to see what are the motivation and barriers for lake and wetland owners to undertake shoreline ecological restoration. So all of this really fed into prioritizing our projects, as well as how we steer our grant funding, grant amounts, targeting certain lakeshore owners.
Do you recall what slowed it from becoming a functional program?
Do I recall what?
What prevented it from becoming a functional program?
I don't. So the file's really large, and sometimes you go down a rabbit hole, and I am in pretty regular contact with Bill. I don't know if we talked about this, but I think they just got busy with other things.
Perfectly fair. I was curious.
Yeah, I think if you compare that time, 2008, 2009, you go back a couple slides. It's right after that, I mean, things just kind of.
Ran to, yeah.
And it was all about the implementation of, so it got set aside.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I was just curious if there was something else or like a nugget they found in doing the barrier assessment that was like, maybe not. That's what I was kind of trying to dig at.
Yeah, so it was the classification system and going through and doing all the like, that's what didn't move forward, is that what?
Yeah,
We
that's my
definitely
understanding.
worked through the, like, adding it to our cost share program and that.
Yeah, yeah. There was meaningful progress made. I was just kind of curious about.
That's the question I have. I went ahead, some of your other slides. I'll ask it now. I always think of Ramsey-Washington as we've done these fantastic jobs of Fail and Goldman, and lots of great examples of shoreline work. Do we have a sense of, are we at 30% or higher, lower of the lakes in the district? How much has that for shoreline? I think even, there's like Beaver Lake, most of that's decent. So it's not just the areas that we worked on. Anybody know?
We don't have a quantitative amount, I would say.
I think that's where I was poking at this.
Yeah.
So again, Coleman is mostly privately owned, so we're talking both public and private to say who has. No, we don't. That would take a little bit of work, but.
We'll get Lauren with that drone and let's start collecting data.
That is we've talked about, the different ways we could assess that, for sure.
We have a good grasp of that for our publicly owned shorelines, because we already look at that, but the private and this a little more difficult.
Yeah, probably different.
Even a aerial survey on something like Near Map or the latest aerials that you've got available would be kind of cool. Sure. Something quick.
Before I hand it over to Pat, just a little bit more on the research on there's many, I don't know if it's many, but there's a lot more than 3 things that we've had published in various journals. I had to pull up the one that I worked on as an intern. That basically studied, okay, we're planting native plants in the water. How do we prevent critters from eating them? And we got good results from that. So I got published. It was a big deal. Lake Phelan Shoreline Restoration. Everybody have a copy of that book. We have a few copies still left over. You gotta pop up on your window.
Yeah, Dan is still on from the DNR.
Yeah, just that there's other shoreline assessment tools out there, the DNR Score Your Shore.
Right. We're working on publishing this online. We don't have it online. But somebody just contacted us for it, so we're gonna put it online. Hot off the press is Bill's swan song, the Urban Lake Shoreline Restoration, basically looking at Lake Phelan 20 years later. He worked with Sue Gladowicz at the University of Minnesota on that. We will be posting that on our website hopefully soon. And so just assessing what plants are still there, what was successful 20 years later of the groundbreaking Lake Phelan restoration.
Excellent. So now that we've seen how the NR program has restored shorelines, we want to take a look at how the district has also restored shorelines in other ways. So kind of going to go over a brief overview of the stewardship grant program. So the district has known that what's happening on the shoreline affects the water quality, and they wanted a way to motivate landowners to install natural shorelines while also educating them at the same time. So in 2006, the Stewardship Grant Program was born to address cost barriers and to incentivize shoreline projects to improve water quality and habitat throughout the district with a cost share program. The program started at $5,000 and has expanded to larger amounts, which we'll get into later. And a little bit more down the road in 2019, there were 3 targeted areas, which you can see on the map. Owasso, Snail Lake, and Twin Lake. And these were targeted because as focus areas because of flood issues and the amount of private shoreline ownership on those lakes. So that's just a really brief overview. So let's say you're a landowner, you want to restore your shoreline. What do? You apply for one of our stewardship grants. So currently, the program has evolved since 2006 to expand our scope of projects that we'll fund. Like I said, we offer more money now. So it starts at $15,000, can go all the way up to $100,000. So 6 different types of projects. And it depends on the landowner you are, on the type of project you want. And it's not only just funding that people are getting with this, they're getting support from Ramsey-Washington with, they get installation plans from landscape architects, they get site consultations from us, and they get guidance long after the project is completed. We'll always answer an email, we're always here to help. And this also helps identify issues as they come up down the line. And there's been quite a bit of shoreline restored with this program. So this started in 2006, so 16 years. There's been 90 shoreline specific projects completed in those 60 years, not 60 years, 16 years. And 2023 alone, there was almost $170,000 awarded to these landowners. And throughout the whole lifespan of this program, it's over $1 million. And I think this is really cool. It really just shows that people are using this program. It is incentivizing people, and it is spreading throughout the entire district, which is awesome. So that's kind of the stewardship grant. So let's say you spent all your money, your shoreline is in. What happens next? We've been talking about it a little bit tonight. It's maintenance. So we are unique in that we offer a maintenance grant. So if you're awarded a stewardship grant, you are responsible for maintenance. And depending on the type of landowner you are, it's 20 years or 5 years. And we offer a 50% cost share of up to $1,500 for up to 5 years. And that's anything maintenance related. It could be to pay a contractor to help you maintain this site. It could be for plant materials, mulch, just anything that Paige and Ashley deem appropriate use of those funds. And once again, it's not just funds that people get, it's more support. So they get inspections and guidance. As your shoreline develops, you might notice that you need some different plant species. We can recommend some. And one thing that's great is help with non-desirable and invasive plant management methods, because depending on the plant species, the environmental conditions, the landowner's goals, a whole bunch of other things, we can use different methods to help maintain these invasive plant populations. And for someone who's been in the restoration game for 10 years, this is really exciting to me because maintenance is crucial but often overlooked in projects. Because as you all know, the first few years of that project, that's the most critical time to control those unwanted plants to help promote your native plant species. And it's not all common knowledge. So people often need a little bit of a helping hand to know what's normal. And it's also great one-on-one time with the landowner to strengthen that partnership with the community. So that kind of brings us back to the beginning of the Vanishing Shorelines paper. So I'm not going to go through every single bullet point here, but overall we're doing a really good job. We can say we're achieving a lot of the goals that the paper recommends. You know, we're always gonna reassess, we're always gonna say, what can we do more of? Especially as, you know, we have Ashley onboarding this whole natural resources team starting. We're always gonna say, what can we do more? How can we help?
Yeah, and just in closing, and not to pat ourselves on the back, but I'm very fortunate to have stepped into this role because we are doing a really good job and it's something I'm really passionate about. I like that we continue to prioritize our work on shorelands, but taking a step further, talking about the Cottage Place wetland tonight and the board prioritizing wetlands. You heard from our former intern Ashley a month ago about the Schletty Tamarack wetland just a couple of blocks away from the office. And there's plenty of those, forgotten about, hidden on systems that could really be that are also publicly owned, that could be a tremendous benefit for water quality, a tremendous benefit for habitats, but also for the community that they're in. We want to continue developing those partnerships with other public landowners. I mentioned City of St. Paul, Ramsey County, but there's lots of other cities, and we've already started steps in that direction. Other areas that we're looking at that for us, the publicly owned lands and what's going on there and what's feasible in some of those other parks and areas like that. Of course, we want to continue collaborating. Paige was tremendous help to us on this, and looking forward to working with Ashley. I know that they annually review, their grant program. And then, of course, continuing to work with Lauren. We have lots of great ideas. These guys, they always have cameras and we're taking pictures and time lapse stuff and crazy stuff. And bouncing ideas off Lauren. So we do have lots of ideas on the outreach, and of course we really like working with Sage and students and things like that. So looking forward to keeping all of that going. I don't think that we had anything else. We talked about achieving healthy ecosystems. And one of the bullet points is one of the goals, and overall, the shoreline work is really important to achieving that goal.
So I personally benefited from the shoreline restoration, and I have opinions and thoughts on it. I think summarized it really well. It's a great way of doing it. I'm curious, how do we ask staff or request staff to go and maybe just look at different mechanisms to understand how many shorelines, just to get a sense of how we're doing there? Is that something that we need to action, or just request the staff to go to say, hey, could you take a flyover or some other mechanisms just to understand our coverage and how well it's going, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I think that's something the board is interested in seeing, kind of where we're at, in percentages of restored shore. I think you can just ask us to take a look at that, and we can come back with a timeline of how, when we could.
And I don't want to be the sole voice on it. What do y'all think? I mean, it'd be nice to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a real need. There's great foundation as Pat and Paul, presented, great history. We're not done.
Yeah.
And let's assess, because there's that whole public-private. I think having that understanding in the hands of Lauren, we'd be better positioned as we start, reaching out.
Yeah.
And it just seems like basic data to me that we ought to go after.
I think it's interesting to look at, the model that we've done for private, like, on Twin and Owasso and Snail, this idea that we go to a lake, we offer it to the homeowners. So I mean, we could look at that, like what would be our next priority lake, and then do an assessment of like that. Like you said, through near map or aerial drone or, something, or maybe when staff are on the lake.
I mean, I was thinking through some of the water quality monitoring thing. Can you build it into something that would, like, you go to that lake periodically to check? That would be great.
It was mentioned the DNR Sawyer Shore. I've not done it, but I've looked through that.
Do you know if is it? Oh, forgive me for interrupting. Is it shoreline owner accessible, those tests?
No, it's done from a boat.
It's
So
done from-
exactly what you're saying, Val, that if staff from, the water quality folks, when they're out in boats collecting samples, if they could do that as an add-on, to get that kind of data too, because there is a good baseline understanding that DNR they've really developed a good tool that it might be another way to kind of pick up from that 2008, 2009 classification work and, get it a little more quantitative.
Yeah, I think here, this is good feedback so that we can talk about kind of a plan for how we would do that.
That would be the ask, is what plan would you put in place to do that? Not to go and tomorrow measure.
Right.
But What
Right.
what do y'all think?
Yeah, yeah, we can talk about that.
What are your thoughts, Matt, Stephanie, Ben?
Just a question. I don't live on the lake, but some of the initial photos I saw, and so I should back up. Thank you for giving us a link to the report. That was really nice. And maybe it might be interesting for the CAC to see it, just as an additional kind of input. And the thing that I thought was interesting is that the photos look kind of like my stereotype quintessential Minnesota land lake shore resident. So the question I have is, how much of that inherent, this is what a lakeshore property looks like, comes in conflict with our any efforts to kind of win people over to converting shoreline. And I only say this because I know there are rules and regulations. I've also seen where a homeowner moves in, they know what the rules and regulations are, but there's nothing that prevents someone from going in and just cutting down a tree and saying, oops, I didn't know. So I'm just saying, we're trying to win win hearts, and I'm wondering, are people, how do you do that? Is this a climate change push? I mean, is it a lakeshore association push to say, the one quote there of, this lawn contributes 100 pounds of algae that you guys don't like in your lake versus, this can improve it. I'm not sure.
Adrian Bell, even from his experience.
Yeah. Or if this is something that Lauren can play off of.
Yeah.
Tries to win his heart.
It's really hitting the nail on the head, because we can spend a whole lot of time like assessing people's shorelines, but we want them to do it, and we want to shift those social norms, right? And we've seen tremendous progress of that finally in like the last 10 years, and you don't have to be a shoreline owner. It's converting your turf grass pollinator habitat, and we're made great strides in just 10 years. But that lawn to lake, people really love that, and
Unobstructed view.
It's trying to target the early adopters is the way you're thinking. I think Lauren and the communication does a great job, but not everybody goes to the sites, not everybody reads the pamphlets, and so finding ways of saying, hey, there's an opportunity here, maybe highlighting, hey, the opportunities would help. I know the ones on our lake who did it were very proactive. We want better water quality. There was a group of us who were extremely passionate about water quality, and so we made choices. We made them work.
And it could be as beneficial to the landowner, say, this prevents geese from coming up on your property.
That sold at least one of our people. That's an FYI, less mowing. They like that actually.
And we have seen too, when you get champions on the lake, like Bill's talking about, that they can start turning the minds of their neighbors too. So it might not happen, they might not agree to it right away, but maybe they'll come back to us and say, now I've seen the benefits and I'd like to do it.
And I think when you raised, about the kind of model that, on Owasso, that, hey, we can do this kind of thing and offer it, and there's a handful of folks go to the next lake, you kind of cycle through over the next coming years. Second time through, we may see more.
That's exactly it. Like,
No,
is Gervais next? I don't know. Which
Well,
one?
it's really helpful too to have public land on it too, so like Owasso, so we're not just asking them to do it, right? We're doing it too, or the county is doing it too. Same with Snail. There was public land on Snail too that we did at the same time, or that was done around the same time, so that helps too. But I think we'll definitely talk about what that looks like moving forward, and I think you're right, going back to some of these areas, hitting again, just saying, oh, just check it in, seeing where we're at.
So, Pat and Paul, on your last slide, your recommendation was to develop partnerships with other public landowners. Were there particular ones you had in mind?
Yeah, we're we're eyeing up Carver Lake, which is on the southern end of the district. So very just narrowly looking at it, but we set up a meeting with the city of Woodbury for next month.
Well, I'm from Woodbury, from Washington County. If you need anything, let me know.
Yeah, I was dog sitting down there, and my wife and I took a walk around the lake, and I'm like, oh, this could really use some help. And I'm like, oh, this is in my new watershed. So, we'll see. Yeah, that was just one of the few ideas that we've had initially, and there's, just a little bit of us is in Washington County, but, their soil and water conservation district's very active, and, so those are just some initial thoughts that we've had.
There's some significant water resources like Carver and Tanners.
Yeah, those three, yeah.
And then the creeks themselves.
Yeah, so just, say the word.
Sure.
Thank you.
This is really great. Thank you, Paul. You mind if we transition to the administrator report?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Patrick, sorry, you both did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just making sure you didn't have any questions on the Maple Mall assessment before.
Oh, yeah, forgive me. That was full information. So
Yeah, that's not an action item. We wanted you to be aware that this is the project that we're moving forward on. We always include the scope summaries for your information.
I did have a question. The ownership has changed, and there's a lot of things that have happened at the mall, since it was installed. How, what is the role, if any, or input, if any, from the current owner, I
Yeah,
should say?
so I've been in contact with them. They, maybe, I don't know which owner. At one point, we had a very active owner, property management company, I guess, more so, who was very, we want everything manicured, and so we have to do a lot of education there, but then it's, since changed hands. They've been pretty quiet the last few years, and now they have a new management company that I know Dave has talked to, I've talked to them. My last message to them was kind of saying, hey, how can we partner on cost? And yes, it was eventually supposed to turn over to them, and they've gone silent since I. So
Okay.
I'll keep, that was somewhat recently, so I don't expect an answer back, but we, our hope is that we can transition some to them.
It's been more than 5 years.
Or,
Yeah.
I guess I would just ask, and I may have read through this, but, in a one sentence, kind of what is the intended outcome?
So I can speak to that. I mean, I thought it was really nice that you highlighted that 20-year report, Paul, on the Phelan Shoreline project, because that was a very significant project for Ramsey-Washington in terms of shoreline restoration. This was a really significant project for the district in terms of all these BMPs and to go this big. So it's, we did this, let's see, was it 2018? We did kind of a full inventory and look at like, well, how is everything doing now and how are these trees doing now? And it seemed like it was a good time to do it now because now we're at 15 years, but also because we'd like to present at some conferences, because people frankly have been asking, like, what's going on with the mall and what happened to all those trees and what these designs that hadn't been done before, how is that all faring? So it seemed like a good time to do a big inventory again. Also, there's some work that needs to be done out there. Every so often there's some trees that need to be replaced, and when that happens, because they're planted in these tree trenches, we need to do a little more thorough assessment of what we think might be an appropriate replacement. So it seemed like a good time to do a deep dive on an assessment. And that's not only for maintenance needs and prescribing, repairs that need to happen, but also because we plan to report out to the greater community of practitioners that's been kind of watching this project over the years. So, thank you. Yeah.
All right, then we can move on to the admin reports. First few items are informational. I did want to mention, Waterfest is before our next board meeting. So, you should have all received an email. Did you receive an email about volunteer requests? I'll make sure. Yeah, yep.
But I have one.
I will, ask Lauren to, reach out to you in particular about, volunteering that day or being present during that day. Lots of activities for you. You don't have to necessarily be put to hard work, but it'd be great if you were planning to attend.
I'll definitely be there, but I'll have the kids in tow.
Yeah. Good. Yep. Staff anniversaries, board action log and updates, Minnesota watersheds updates, those are all informational unless you have any questions. Otherwise, the one that warrants a little bit more discussion is the West Vadnais Lake. Wanted to bring this back for discussion. We have a few new board members since we've last really had big discussions about this. So I put it as a discussion item here before I move forward with anything else. Years ago, 2019, 2020, 2021, there was discussions about doing a boundary change to include West Vadnais Lake into our watershed district. That concern at the time was about the flow path and the flood risk concerns. As you see in the map, the flow, comes out of Grass Lake, so from our district into West Vadnais Lake, which is in the Volano Vadnais Lake Area Watershed Management Organization, and then right back into our district through the lake and then out. During the high water level years, we did a lot of work in this area, spent a lot of time and money. And honestly, in this area, we've done a lot of work with the outlet, which, as I mentioned in the memo, is in our watershed. The outlet itself, all the controls for that lake are in our watershed. It's the lake itself that's not. We did start pursuing that boundary change discussion. Our board president at the time, Larry, and I met with the Blamo and City of Vadnais Heights, and I would say they were supportive of moving forward with those discussions, with some hesitation, being that it's their namesake, part of their namesake lake. West Vadnais Lake is historically was one lake with East Vadnais Lake. At some point in time, a berm was put between the two. There's a trail that goes through that area. We did do a report years ago the goal of that report was to see, could we push water from West Vadnais to East Vadnais to help with water level concerns. At the time, there was water, over Rice Street, and there was concerns about the overflow into Twin Lake from West Vadnais that was discovered. So that was the look, could we, force water into East Vadnais from West Vadnais, and there was found that there was little connection between the two underground for that purpose, that it wasn't significant enough to allow that as an option for lowering water levels. Since then, we've lowered the outlet of West Vadnais Lake, so we have provided more flood storage because now we've been in drought years. So it did allow the water levels to recede. And oops, so from a flood risk perspective, we were able to complete all the projects that we had identified in this area. The other concern is water quality, right? So this is on the impaired waters. West Vadnais is on the impaired waters list. It does flow into our district, that water quality. There's, we've already done some projects with Blamo to do carp management, carp surveys, carp management work with them. The key point that I'm trying to get to with all this is that Blamo is starting their TMDL process for West Vadnais Lake, which is the study that's required under the impaired waters list. So they're embarking on that this year. I believe it's their responsibility to complete that TMDL, and I think because it's their water body and it's been historically their water quality of this lake system, I think already started that process, and they've already started their watershed management plan update. I think I would like to see them complete that work, with us as a partner. Obviously, we will work with them on that, both through their watershed management plan and their TMDL work. We would do the same thing, you know, if it were in our watershed, we would complete that TMDL. We would have an implementation plan, we would look towards implementation. I anticipate that they'll be doing that as well, right? So they'll complete their TMDL, have their implementation plan, and then work towards implementation. I think we have an opportunity here because of both of our watershed management plan update processes as well, that we can build into our plan, and be more clear about the flow paths through this area. I don't think we need to do a boundary change to really reach our goals in this area. So what I'm proposing is that we hold off on the boundary change at this point in time.
So I was part of the conversation with the Vlamo and the city and all that. I can tell you, they've definitely partnered when we've asked. We've initiated a lot of things. From a board perspective at the time, we were concerned about their time decision. They meet every other month, and their budget is significantly smaller than ours in terms of what's available in terms of capital to actually address some of the concerns that we've had. And so at the time, with the high water levels, it really just made sense. If we needed to move with speed and decisiveness, do we put the lake? Can we have a boundary change? And that was some of the discussions that we're having at the board. To what Tina highlighted, I'm supportive of. What I would like to see, just to reinforce what she said, is purposeful wording within our planning documentation, so we could highlight some terms around those outflows, what to do in situations, and really better highlight our role and their role and how we work cooperatively. And I actually think it would benefit having not only that, but also we also partner with Cap Region very closely, very well. So when we go through planning, purposefully focus on these areas where we do need a partner in high water years would be, just to reinforce what Tina said. I'm definitely, having been on the board at the time, seeing the flooding, knowing the concerns voiced by waters receiving Vadnais waters, there's a lot of concerns there. So we're going to have to be purposeful on how we plan and approach it. That's what I would. So I'm supporting Tina's recommendation to remove it from the action list, but I don't want to lose it. So we have now ongoing list of things for the management plan that we will probably keep as a separate thing. Thoughts?
I don't have the history, but it does make sense to me what I read, in the packet, that the TMDL is beginning. And it's almost like if you do the pros and cons, at this point in time, I mean, we partnered with them for the bow landing, we've worked with them with CARP, we've, done an outlet and some adjustments to reduce the likelihood of flowing into Twin Lake. It seems to me like there's not a lot of pros to do more. It's like, I'm inclined to not move forward with a boundary change at all, but certainly not now. It seems to me now is not the time for that boundary change, if one were ever to occur.
I would like to think our conversations around this topic has encouraged Vlamo to accelerate some of those processes. Like Tina said, these are things that had to start anyway. So yeah, that makes sense.
And I just throw out there, I don't know, others at the table may have a better sense. By us not taking an action to really seek that boundary change may send a signal to Vlamo that, hey, it's yours. Take that responsibility, retain that name, carry it forward. I mean,
What do others think?
During the high water situation, I know the watershed came under a lot of the, kind of under the spotlight. Did Wamo share that?
Partly, not as much, I mean,
From a constituent standpoint, they did not. They
No.
pointed directly to Ramsey-Washington. So whenever people with concerns would go to that group, they would send us here.
and that's fair, I think, because it wasn't the lake itself that was the problem, right? Or it wasn't the concern, the outlet was the concern, the flow from grass was a concern. And then the overflow, all of that is in our district, right? So that makes sense that we would be responsible for that, where they were, from a constituents, they didn't take that, the same discussion that we did, but they were very supportive and we worked with staff to staff was very, together, I would say.
They also didn't have any structures at risk around West Vadnais Lake. It was all elsewhere in Ramsey-Washington.
Their structures are at a much higher.
Much
elevation.
higher, yeah.
So as long as there's purposeful language in the new planning, I'm comfortable removing the action item. Any further questions or comments?
What you just said too about, we're acquiring quite a list in our
Yes.
watershed management plan. We keep saying, well, this is gonna be really good for our watershed management plan update. As a staff, we do have that list. If you'd like me to include that, maybe on the action list, maybe a separate table.
I was thinking, and I like section 12, that is a for information is what it feels like to me. You
Put in
could
the
put it,
PSR.
yeah, I would put it in the
Yeah, in the
PSR is
findings.
my opinion.
Yep.
Because we should just have a section, especially looking forward in the next couple of
Yeah.
years that planning is going to occur. We should probably just start saying, okay, this is where we are in the list, and just, you
Sure.
can keep it as C,
Yeah.
if you will.
Sure.
That would be my suggestion. The action item things, we want to take off,
Yeah,
put on
right.
more regularly.
Sure, that makes sense. Good. Thank you. All I had for the administrator's report, unless you had any questions.
So I say thank you to Lauren, 4 years, that's good.
Yeah.
With how long you guys stick around, she has another 28.
Yeah, right. I know, Shelley's 23 years. Catch up.
Oh, man. Going to project and program status reports. I had one question that I wanted to make sure that I asked, but how do others have questions?
That was a good summary.
I'm just interested in the new technologies with the guidance for us when it comes
Yeah.
to PFAS at some point. Is that must be in the works, right? Because we help regulate and monitor those bodies, so.
So, scrolling to try to find them.
No, it's okay. I
Yeah.
know from other company business, everybody's waiting for additional guidance on PFAS and all
Yeah.
these different things.
Thank you. There we go. Yeah, so I wrote this month and it just takes so long. And I think the things that we included in here that felt really significant might not feel so significant to a watershed district, but I think ultimately this is all part of the process. I mean, the fact that now, kind of quote something. Thank you. There we go. The fact that, now these have standards under the Drinking Water Act, and the fact that they've been some of the compounds have been recognized for hazardous. These sound like boring, like, yeah, of course. But when there's numbers assigned and when they're on lists for like Superfund sites, ultimately that does find its way to everyone's regulatory responsibilities. So right now there's a lot of focus on drinking water because, of course, I mean, that's a primary, I think I put in here that.
Water and fish, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so it's about preventing pollution, managing it when it's not feasible to prevent it, and clean up PFAS sites. So there's a lot going on with in industry, there's a lot going on.
Mhm.
I mean, I know I can speak for our company, we're doing a lot of stuff with a lot of folks. You know, monitoring for PFAS on industrial sites and getting ready. The fact that these standards are out is a really, really big deal. That's why you saw that information on our website. So in the meantime, you know, we know that this is around in our watersheds as well. And so then it does become a question of like, okay, what's the next exposure? So people aren't really drinking lake water, but they might be eating fish out of it. And, you know, then you start to worry about recreational exposures when people are swimming. So I don't think we're quite to the point where there are real true action items for watershed districts. What I think is important is to be aware of what's going on in these other corners as it approaches your area and your, you know, the things that you're responsible for, and also knowing where it is. So that's one thing. Valley Branch has some really nice maps of what's known about the PFAS plumes relative to, you know, their water bodies, their creeks, their drainage areas. And so that's something that we're gonna be reaching out for, to get that information as well. Actually, I think we already have it, but I wanna make sure that it's the most recent, so that we'll be able to have maps for Ramsey-Washington too. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's obvious what you'll do with that. But for example, if we were proposing a large regional infiltration basin right over a PFAS plume, we might wanna think about that a little bit. It's not currently obviously illegal to do that, but it is at the point where I think we need to be thoughtful about where your exposures are. And, you know, just like, Battle Creek, we know that there's some foam there. So when we are monitoring the tunnel, we're thoughtful about that. And I think, as we go forward, it will be a little clearer what we can do, but we're not at a point where we're recommending to our watershed districts, you should be investing in filtration, you know, technologies to clean up Battle Creek. We've actually had a couple of clients that have asked us to cost that out, and it's mind-blowingly expensive, as you would imagine. I mean, the concentrations are lower than they would be at an industrial site, and you know, and also some of the sources of the PFAS in your creeks and lakes are from sites that are currently getting cleaned up. So everything's still in motion. But it seemed like a good time to at least give you an update. You're not missing anything in terms of, there's nothing you should be doing necessarily, but we'll keep tracking PFAS in the news, and we'll make sure that to the extent that we can understand where PFAS is showing up in your watershed district, that we can make sure that you know that.
Yeah, it's been almost about a year since the last update on the PFAS things, which it'd be nice to revisit maybe toward the end. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would just say, I think it's an excellent summary that you can pull together and provide it. There are a number of things that are coming, that are gonna be coming.
Yeah.
And so.
It's gonna come fast.
Well, so I think it is advisable that we try to stay current and keep, you know, apprised of.
Yep.
What things are coming forward.
Yeah.
I know there are some industries actually getting updated monthly. I will be good for that. So, any other questions on the project and status reports?
Just a comment on the CAC. I just wanted to, I was at a Boys and Girls Club gala recently, and it was funny. It was came across as an acknowledgement of how important the Watershed Excellence Awards are. So Grina Mua was doing a presentation and for Youth of the Year, but she was introduced obviously as the branch director for Eastside, but also as the Watershed Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Award winner. So
That's cool.
very cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thanks for sharing that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So last thing is manager comments. Thank you for bearing with us. Sometimes when you look at the agendas, it's like, oh, that should be a really fast thing. And then we spend 30 minutes on it and it goes that way. So I appreciate it. It's late night. I don't have any comments. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Seconded?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Let's go home.
Mark, I'll confirm the cottage space